When the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalm 23. One of the most beautiful poems and pieces of scripture that we have in our Bible. This particular poem has been the solace of, I would guess, billions of people. In the life of St. Paul's Anglican Church, we are going through this psalm over the next few weeks. Today is the first sermon in our series, When the Lord is My Shepherd. Yes, this book adds to this particular first line of Psalm 23, but it does so with a purpose. And this morning we're going to introduce that purpose. And I hope that as you watch these videos, you'll use this opportunity to grow closer and closer. First to a shepherd, then to your shepherd, and then to your shepherd who leads you day by day. So I invite you to this sermon series, and I invite you to this book. It's a wonderful book that you can read daily. The devotions are about a page or two every day, and they go from beginning tomorrow, November 2nd. That's when we hope you can start, but you can start anytime and go for 4 weeks, moving through this book to help address a time right now during COVID-19 in which we can trust the Lord at all times. Now, thinking about COVID-19 and thinking about where we aren't a few weeks in. We aren't a few months in. You know where we are? We are 9 months into COVID-19. And after 9 months into COVID-19, I am pretty sure that we're all pretty tired of those tired cliches that we've been seeing all over the place. And I kind of want to go through a few of these cliches because they are phrases and cliches that I never want to hear again. So before I do that, on the last pages of our bulletin this Sunday, you can get right from our website or from the e-epistle is this. See this? This is a sermon outline, and I hope to have this available for you as a connection that you can have. As you're going through this sermon, you can look at the sermon outline, have it right in front of you, and make notes. Now back to the task at hand. Things that I don't ever want to hear again. I don't know about you, but I don't ever want to hear any of these things again. And I'm going to phrase them in the form of a question, maybe, or let participatory time, then maybe you can fill in the blanks for me. What about this phrase? We need to wash our hands for how many seconds? 30 seconds. I don't ever want to be told to wash my hands for 30 seconds. I'll do it. But man, I am tired of it. What about this phrase? These are unprecedented times. Oh my goodness, I've heard that phrase so often that I just tune you out when I hear the word unprecedented. Now, what about this one? I'll tune you out when I hear this too. We're all just trying to find our new normal. Oh my goodness, this phrase. I don't ever want to hear the word new normal again. Now, here's another phrase. I usually see this one when it comes to businesses, signs on their walls, advertising, commercials on TV. It says, your safety is our greatest concern. Oh my goodness, I just don't want to hear that anymore. It's everywhere. You know, sometimes I just want to hear a business say something truthful, such as, your money is our greatest concern. Your safety, well, we can do without that, but it's your money that's our greatest concern. Now that is a good and bad thing, but I was really thinking about that phrase, your safety is our greatest concern. Now, here's the last one that I'm going to do. And this is one that's a tried and true one, but I really want to talk about this one for a moment. We are all in this together. Now, I know we're tired of hearing that particular phrase. I'm tired of hearing it because sometimes we feel that we're not in it together, because how could anyone possibly know what I'm going through? You don't have kids. You don't understand what I'm going through. You don't have a grandmother or a mother or someone who is in a nursing home. You don't understand what I'm going through. Well, think about this. A large ship, an aircraft carrier, has helmsmen, engine men, people who work on the planes, people who work below deck. No matter where your job is, you are not going to 100% understand what another person is going through in their particular tasks. But you are all a part of the same ship. You're all in the same boat. Get it? We're all working towards the same goal. And in that, we're all working together. Now, here's what I think about all these different phrases. This is really what it gets down to. We all have COVID fatigue. Some people call it coronavirus fatigue. Whether you call it that, whatever you call it, we're fatigued, we're tired, and we're having very difficult times dealing with things. I want to tell you about yesterday. Yesterday was Halloween. That was a very difficult day for my family. Difficult because our kids were finally getting to the first big, large-scale activity that they were so looking forward to. Trick-or-treating. Getting together with friends. Dressing up at school. And nothing, and I mean no part of Halloween could happen in the way that it has traditionally happened over the last number of years. They were finally saying we could finally get back to a normal. And it was really difficult because nothing about it was normal. We did go trick-or-treating a little bit, but the trick-or-treating houses were sparse, and they got some candy, but it just wasn't the same. Now, the question that we might ask, what my family asked, because we decided to go through all the routines. We did all the pumpkin carving, pumpkin decorating, costumes, all the different things. We even got candy for trick-or-treaters. And then after the night was over, my wife and I looked at each other and said, was it really worth it? What's going on here? I'm not so sure it was. But then we looked at our kids and we recognized that what we wanted for them was so much greater than what they were able to experience. But what we were able to provide for them met every need that they had. It was a struggle that day. Halloween was really a struggle, but we got through it together. And in the end, it was about our family tradition and our family coming together. And so we looked at it in a very different way. Now, I don't want to be, I guess you can call it Debbie Downer, this whole sermon, but I do want to acknowledge some of the challenges and difficulties that we're going through. And one of the great difficulties that we are going through as a church actually is getting together. Now, we have had great difficulties in getting together and we're overcoming them. But even in overcoming them, it's still an overwhelming time. There is a wonderful group called Barna who does studies. Much of their studies are based on church and culture and life together. And they did a study in which they examined and to see who is still going to church, who is able to go to church. And they studied and found out that only 1/3 of the population of Christians who were regular attenders at church before the coronavirus are still actively attending a church today. We're not talking about everyone in the world, all people. We're talking about those who are active members of congregations. Only 1/3 are active right now. And that's in both live streaming and in-person worship. They also show that over half of us are cheating on our churches. What does that mean? We're watching live streams of other church services, not just our own. Now, that's not really cheating. But what I mean to say is that we are looking around. This particular aspect is telling us that people are not engaged. They're feeling isolated. They're not feeling up for it. And when they are feeling up for it, they're looking. They're really searching for hope. They're not always finding it in one place. Now, here's a statistic that is really difficult for the life of the church. A full 1/3 of those who have been actively participating in church have not watched a live stream or gone to a service of any kind in any church since the beginning of March when this all happened. 1/3 is missing. Now, why am I talking about these difficult statistics? I'm talking about them because I want us to recognize not only that we're fatigued, but we're in a time in which we desperately need connection and hope. And that's where we begin to see the good news. That's where our book, When the Lord is My Shepherd, comes into play for all of us. You see, the book, When the Lord is My Shepherd, is about the poem, the psalm written by David. And we need to recognize and understand where David was in the moments of writing this, because we don't need to actually know his story to see the beauty and the help that this psalm is for us as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. But I do want to talk a little bit about David, because I do want us to understand and recognize that what we need more than anything else is what David needed. When David was at his lowest point, when his son Absalom had usurped the throne, led a coup, and kicked David out of Jerusalem, when the country of Israel was divided in half, and there was a great civil war going on, and David didn't know what was going to happen to him. He knew one thing, and it was a very tragic thing, that no matter what, either he or his son Absalom, who led the coup, would be destroyed. It was an untenable place for David to be in. He didn't know what to do. His armies had to attack Absalom's armies. They had to defeat them, and if they weren't defeated, then he would be destroyed. But if they did defeat him, his son would be destroyed. Imagine that situation, feeling that there is no winners. David wrote this psalm asking for God's provision and God's hope. But David at this point had been king for a very long time. And he could have asked God, the king of Israel, to come and help him. But he didn't. He asked who? God, the shepherd. He cried out to God and said, "The Lord is my shepherd." You see, in our life together, in our dealings with COVID-19, in feeling isolated and lonely, we're very much like David, reaching out at something, sometimes finding that nothing is there, wondering, is there any hope for us? Well, that's why we want to encourage you to look at Psalm 23, because Psalm 23 gives us this image of who God is. And Psalm 23 helps us come back to a place where we can understand that everything that we're going through right now in our life, we have a shepherd, a loving caretaker who feeds us, who cares for us, who defends us, and who lays down his life for us. These are the characteristics of a shepherd, that good shepherd is our good shepherd. You see, within the context of our lives, we need to understand and rediscover what it means to trust in the good shepherd. And to do that, first we need to understand and acknowledge what a good shepherd is. The good shepherd. A shepherd is someone who, let me say this. David knew intimately who and what a shepherd is, who and what a shepherd does. He knew intimately that a shepherd feeds the sheep, takes care of the sheep, leads the sheep, defends the sheep. He knew intimately that God, in the characteristics of the shepherd, would be everything that a person would need. That's why first we need to understand within the context of Psalm 23 as we move through it as a blessing and an offering in our life, that we need to look and see that God is a shepherd to us. And that's a very difficult thing in times of distress and struggle. But God, as the shepherd, is one who feeds, defends, protects, and lays down his life for the sheep. And this psalm helps us look and see this is who God says that he is. Not just in the Bible, but we see in the book of Revelation that the shepherd is in the midst of his people in heaven. We also see this when Jesus talks about the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. I lay my life down for my sheep. My sheep hear my voice and they follow me. You see, we've forgotten what the voice of the shepherd sounds like. We've forgotten what the shepherd looks like, what the shepherd does. And maybe even more importantly, after looking at who the shepherd is and what the shepherd does, all too often we've forgotten that he does that for us. I have a saying about announcements in church. And I say announcements are information for other people. What I mean is that when we need help in the life of the church, somebody says, oh, I didn't know that you needed help. And I said, it's been in the announcements for a month. Oh, well, that's announcements. That's information for other people. Nobody told me. When we look at Jesus as the good shepherd, when David looks at the shepherd, he's not just acknowledging that God is a shepherd. What is he saying? That the Lord is my shepherd. You see, from the attributes of who God is as a shepherd, David wants to have those attributes active and living in his life. He wants to build a relationship with that shepherd. He wants that shepherd to feed, lead, provide, defend, and lay down his life for him. So when we're looking at this psalm, as we begin to look at it, when we see that the Lord is our shepherd, when he's my shepherd, not only do we understand and know what the attributes of God are, but we get to say that those are the attributes that I get to receive because he is my God. He will take care of me. Getting to a place of comfort in dealing with COVID and coronavirus this whole time, it's really about remembering that we have a shepherd, and that shepherd is there for us. Now, our particular book moves into a third area. And this third area is contingent upon a word that is not in Psalm 23, but is at the beginning of the title of this devotional book that we're hoping that we'll all go through. And that is the word when. You see, if we know that the Lord is a shepherd, and then we come to understand that that shepherd is my shepherd, and that he can care for my needs, then we look at that word when. That makes it profoundly real. Because now we're not only looking at the reality or the idea that God is a shepherd, we move to God as my shepherd. Now I can tangibly point to areas of my life when he was there for me. When the Lord is my shepherd. This makes it a very real and powerful relationship. When the Lord is my shepherd helps, and really internalizing that, helps us understand that no matter what we're going through, the valley, even the valley of the shadow of death, that we can fear no evil, for our shepherd is with us. That's when the shepherd is with us. And so today, when we're looking at the very beginning of this psalm, when we're looking at the very beginning of moving from a place of fear, a place of anxiety and struggle, looking for that calmness of spirit, we begin to do so by saying, the Lord is my shepherd. And when the Lord is my shepherd, I can trust him at all times. You see, that's the place that we need to get to. A place that we've forgotten. Maybe not so much forgotten, but we've been so overwhelmed by the world around us that we simply need to have it renewed in us. And so when the Lord is my shepherd, when we really internalize that and see that God is active in our life, moving us, helping us, defending us in the midst of coronavirus, guess what happens? We begin to transform our minds, transform our hearts, and begin to trust the Lord to get us not only through this time, but to bless us in this time and show us how he can work in our lives powerfully. Next week, we're going to get to this phrase, I shall not want. It really is the culmination of that first line, when the Lord is my shepherd. When we really internalize that, we get to this phrase, I shall not want. So now I want to conclude our time this morning, today, as you're looking at this sermon. Invite us to go from a knowledge that God is a shepherd to internalizing that he's our shepherd, and then seeing that, allowing him to work in specific areas of our lives, and for us to say, wow, this is what happened when the Lord was my shepherd. And I know that in the ultimate end of all this, we say, when the Lord is my shepherd, the best part of it is that I shall not want. So I hope that you come back and watch the next sermon, looking at the next stage of our life together. And I pray that the Lord would bless you, that the Lord would keep you, that he would show his face to you, that you would experience what it means when Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. I pray that you would be able to experience what it truly means, just as Revelation said what it means for those who have entered into God's kingdom. It says this, then one of the elders addressed me, saying, who are these clothed in white robes? That's us. And from where have they come? I said to him, Sir, you know. And he said to me, these are the ones coming out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. For the Lamb is in the midst of the throne and will be their shepherd. And he will guide them to springs of living water. And what's going to happen? That's right. God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and they shall not want. In the name of the Father, the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen.